Russia breaking news: if Ukraine uses cluster bombs, we will strike back. Putin. If Ukraine uses cluster munitions against Russia, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that Russia has a sufficient stockpile and will consider using them against Ukraine. If cluster munitions are used against Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said that his country has a sufficient stockpile and may use them against Ukraine. During an interview with Russian media outlets, the Russian president assured the public that his country possesses a sufficient stockpile of cluster bombs of varying types. To paraphrase Winston Churchill, if they are used against us, we reserve the right to mirror actions. Putin's comments arrived just after the Ukraine had received a shipment of cluster munitions manufactured in the United States. Because the weapons disperse explosive material, known as bomblets, over wide areas, they pose a significant threat to civilians and noncombatants when used near populated areas. Those that don't detonate upon impact pose a long-term threat to anyone who comes into contact with them, similar to landmines, according to CNN. More than 100 countries, including the United Kingdom, France, and Germany, have signed a treaty banning the use of cluster weapons due to the threat they pose. According to Putin's interview, the United States government has declared the use of cluster munitions a war crime. But he did not specify when or who in the administration had made the comments. Even though the United Nations released a report in March saying it had collected credible reports that Russian forces had used cluster munitions in populated areas at least 24 times, the president insisted that Russia has not yet used them. After President Vladimir V Putin withdrew Russia from the Black Sea grain deal on Monday, wheat prices skyrocketed, putting vulnerable countries in Africa and the global south at risk of a new round of food insecurity. A key trade route for grain from Ukraine, one of the world's major breadbaskets, to global markets has been put in jeopardy by the Kremlin's move, sending Chicago wheat futures, a barometer for global prices, soaring by more than 4%. According to Timothy Ash, a senior sovereign strategist at Bluebay Asset Management in London and an expert on Russia and Ukraine, Putin's move appears to be part of a larger effort to reassert an aura of unassailable authority after a failed mutiny by the Wagner Group. Mr. Ash has stated, it will hurt specific countries dependent on these exports. Moreover, it shows how weak Putin is after the Wagner coup. He is now desperate to take any bit of leverage he can. After Russia invaded Ukraine and blocked ships from transporting Ukraine's grain out of its Black Sea ports, the international community reached the Black Sea Grain Initiative a year ago to ease the resulting global food crisis. Grain prices skyrocketed as a result of the obstructions, setting new records. A year after the agreement, the Food Price Index published by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization shows that food prices have decreased by over 23% from their peak in March 2022. According to the UN, the agreement has resulted in the export of over 35 million tons of essential food commodities from Ukrainian Black Sea ports to 45 countries across 3 continents. With the Black Sea ports once again closed, Ukraine may have to rely more heavily on the Danube River and inland transport by truck and train to export the grain. These alternatives take significantly longer than loading the commodities onto ships. Food prices may not skyrocket to the extremes seen shortly after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, however, due to a number of factors. First, China's slowing economic recovery has dampened expectations for commodity prices over the next year. Second, rising food and fuel prices in the wake of Russian aggression have contributed to a global cost of living crisis that is dampening demand worldwide. According to an analysis conducted by Oxford Economics, both manufacturing and production costs and supply chain stresses are decreasing. However, the think tank predicted that even though food prices have been trending lower, they will still be high compared to pre-war levels. Putin signed an unexpected order to temporarily seize the Russian operations of 2 major European companies the day before he withdrew from the grain accord, serving as a separate warning shot to Europe. Dairy giant Danone, headquartered in France, issued a statement saying it was investigating the situation after Russian authorities temporarily took control of the company's assets in Russia. In addition, the firm stated that it was preparing to take all necessary measures to protect its rights as shareholder of Danone Russia, and the continuity of the operations of the business in the interest of all stakeholders, in particular its employees. After learning on Sunday that its Baltika breweries in Russia had been transferred to the temporary management of the Russian Federal Agency for State Property Management, the Danish brewer Carlsberg, the world's third-largest beer maker, announced it would be closing the facilities. Carlsberg's exit from Russia was first announced over a year ago. It announced last month that it would be investing $40 million more in its Ukrainian factories and that it had sold its 8,400-person Russian operation. As a result of the presidential decree, the prospects for this sale process are now highly uncertain, Carlsberg said in a statement released on Sunday.